Or,
yeah.
Is that a bird? I'm going to run out of coffee.
All right, we are live. Good morning, Oakley, Kansas. Good morning, America. This is Justin Wieland at Seeking Context here with Paul Heskett. We're at the library in Oakley, Kansas. This is my first sort of collaboration with the Fick Fossil Museum in Oakley to do some interviews that are related to Logan County history that the museum may be able to use for some exhibits in the future. And so learning about life and history in Northwest Kansas. So, Paul, thanks for joining me today.
You bet. I asked earlier if it was going to be video or audio, and now it's video, and I would have put on my cute face if I'd have known. Oh, my collar's off. So, yeah, here we are. And I will tell you, first time I've been in the library in 100 years. First time I think I've been on video. So a lot of firsts for me here. So,
all right. Well, I'm glad that we finally got to this. We had some scheduling delays with COVID kind of taking over Northwest Kansas in the last few months. But things are looking up. And so I want to ask Paul, you've been in radio for the last 40 years.
I went to Colby Community College. Mm-hmm. How I got into radio, well, kind of a long story. I was going to take radio part-time. I was going to go photography full-time, but there were some really good-looking girls in the radio line, and I kind of went over to talk to them. And so I went up, and the guy goes, you can take photography on this side and do radio as a main course. And so that's what made it. And I did have some, I used to walk around and going 1520 KOMA, and I had a classmate that just thought you ought to get into radio, and an art teacher who also, we listened to a KSTP in the morning, best radio ever heard, and that had a lot to do with why I got in there. So even though I'm getting ahead of your questions, that's how I got there way back out of Colby Community College, and that's all I've ever done. Just 2 years at Colby College. I made a good living for just a community college of 2 years. Went on to Hayes and worked at KYS Radio, where I worked while my buddies went to school at Fort Hayes. And when we came out 2 years later, I knew so much more than them, and I'm getting paid for the job of TV and radio and all that. So that was a good choice. And then came back to Northwest Kansas after a little bit in Iola, a little bit in Oberlin, and I've been at KXXX since 1983. That's all I've done.
All right.
So every owner that's ever owned us.
I was 10 years old when you started there.
Yes,
so it's kind of
that.
That's the only radio that I remember around here. But so tell me about your today. So you work in radio. What does a person in your role actually do day to day in the world of radio?
I'm not on air like we used to be. I used to have the morning show and I was on air all the time. And now I'm on just once a week, which is plenty. And I sell for radio, which is our Northwest Kansas stations, Goodland and Colby, 3 in Goodland and 2 in Colby. And then I also sell for our whole network, which is about 33 stations. We're the biggest ag network in the state of Kansas for Rockingham Media. So my day is really a lot of emails in the morning, some phone calls. I can work a lot, like my job need to be any easier, but I can work a lot from home with just emails and do a lot from there. I cut my commercials. Probably 100% of them the last year have been on my phone, or just email them in, and somebody will put them in the control rooms and put music underneath them. I can do my own editing, but it's much easier to send it off to the professionals. So my job in the morning is just waking up, emails, phone calls. Now and then we do go in for a blitz of, we just had a Christmas blitz where we went in and it was on a market set go, and it's called Holiday Greetings. That was really the only time I had to be there for a sales event outside of a year when it was Holiday Greetings. So they really give me a lot of loose reins, but I keep if you hit your numbers, they let you go. I had a manager one time when bought a cabin in Colorado, and I started hitting my goals about the 10th of the month. And I said, well, the deal is if I hit my goals, I can go to the mountains, right? And he goes, well, yeah. So I made his day because by the 10th of the month, I was out in the Colorado, worked real well for me. So anyway, incentive commission salesman, and sales is what I do for Rockingham Media, the network, and for locally in Northwest Kansas.
Cool. And so how does that sales work? So you are going to a business, or are they coming to you? Are you pounding the pavement to get people to advertise?
I just said this the other day. We're no longer salesmen. We're order takers. We used to go, here's our package. Here's a display of everything that's going to run. And it's a nice, pretty picture of a microphone and radio. And sadly, we don't do that as much as we used to. And radio is really quite a demand right now. And I think because TV is, a lot of people don't even have where they can get network TV. So that businesses came to us. Farm brought, we used to lose a competition was like a High Plains Journal, farm magazines. Holy mackerel. They're about that thin anymore. So we picked up that revenue of, money coming in. So our customers, sadly enough, I've got people right now need on the air. So it's made us little soft and we're not near the salespeople we used to be. So yeah, I call up. I do a lot on phone. With COVID, I didn't get out much. Actually, my sales increased with COVID, and so did they overall. At least in our Rockingham Media company, it increased with people wanting to advertise. Hey, we are open. Hey, we have a delivery available, and so. We had a really good year with COVID. A lot of people did. Your farming homes and et cetera. So yeah, it's fun experience. And again, it's not going out like we used to. Like you say, we don't beat the streets anymore.
Right. Well, and so is there a way for, if you're a business and you are doing radio advertising, to measure the impact?
I've always done a thing like make fun of somebody, oh golly, whoever it might be, I'll put it in the ad, ask him about his new hairpiece or something like that. And people would just be, in fact, I had people call me up, what are you running on my ad right now? I've had about 20 people say, that my hair's not real or whatever. I do a little bit of that humor in the advertising, get some response. And really, if it's a good product at a really good price, big tire sale or whatever, they get a lot of calls. So you have a lot of listeners. We work hard at that too, because we have farm directors where other radio stations don't, news directors. We're live. A lot of stations went satellite, and I don't know why they did that, but when they went satellite, they gave up a lot of revenue. We went after more people and have farm directors and do a lot of live and a lot on Facebook. So we've worked really hard at building that up. And so, yeah, it's effective as far as, again, the better product and just keeping your name out there, that's part of advertising. Just, they say it hits your subconscious that why you reach for Tide rather than Blue Hemorrhoid or whatever the other competition might be. It plants something in there, and so that's why they remember Oakley Farm and Home, Great Western Tire, and you have a little motto, and sometimes people or a jingle, and people will sing that. So different ways you can measure it, but it works, or they wouldn't be doing it. I have clients have actually been on the air since I started my program. I've had some of the same. A lot of them are gone now, but some of the same people, L&M Steel, since the day we started, they've never came off. So it must work.
Wow, that's cool. How many people are, how big is the organization itself?
We, Rockingham Media, is that what you're talking about? We're Hayes and Great Bend, and we're Dodge City, Garden City. We sold Salina off. But we're probably about 14 stations that we own. And then the network that I can sell for, Rockingham, that's where you hear Madison Mackley, our farm director, is about 32 radio stations. So I can sell for all 32. We hit into Missouri, obviously into Colorado with the big KXXX AM, into Oklahoma with Liberal, and again, KXXX, and then Nebraska. So we hit the whole state, and I can sell for the whole state.
Okay, cool. And so then I assume shows, some are local, unique to a station, but a lot of them are broadcast across all of the networks?
Right. Very few. We have very few syndicated programs. Mine's on AM and FM here. And Madison's the ones that are all our markets, farm news, ag news with her are broadcast at all the networks. So most of it's just local, unique programming. You can't find it, on iPod or something.
It's not streaming or
no. We do stream now, and I know this is old fashioned. I don't really see the benefit of it. The other day we had a meeting exactly a week ago, and they can show now, like I had listeners in Alaska, and KXXX has a listenership. I call it it's kind of a group of military guys that listen to us on KXXX, and they might be at the Panama Canal, and they'll show that they're listening to it by holding up, the KXXX signal right there. So it's all over. I don't know where that ties into extra money for us, but it's cool getting calls from Texas and Alaska and even, Soviet Union. There's another Paul Heskett out there, nothing like me.
What?
Yeah. And he's in the UK, and he listens all the time and has more people listening. So that's kind of cool. That again, I don't see where it turns into more money, but it's sure unique that
right.
you're hitting that many radios.
Oh, you've got a broad reach.
Yeah, I'd say more so than I ever thought radio could do. Yes.
Right. Well, so how did you, taking it back? You talked a little bit about Colby Community College, but how did you get your start in radio, and what sort of led you to do this as a career path?
I had the college station actually operated just like a real regular station, sign off to sign, sign off and then sign on in the morning to sign off at night. And I had my own show eventually in the morning. And then back then they had a program where you'd work at the college. And if you were good enough and passed their test, you could go over and work on 100,000 watt FM, KXXX FM or KXXX AM, and you got paid. And that was a great program. And I remember practicing. I'd go in at night when the stations would be off the air, put everything, just like I was on the air. And so the first day I went on, I had hours of already knowing how that board worked and everything. So I think the owners liked that, and they gave me my own time slot in the nighttime. And then I was offered full time after I went to Hayes to come back, and it was full time on air. I signed on at 7 a.m. till noon, and then it got to be 7 to 9, and then eventually got off there and just have the Saturday program. So it was just having fun and working. I'd hate to say working hard when in radio, but I applied myself.
Well, so what was the show? Was it music?
Yeah, it was on the FM side, and it was all music, just a pretty upbeat going. You still had markets and news, but it was just adult contemporary, which it still is format. And then now and then I'd go over to KXXX, which was country since I can remember. And it's the big AM. And you worked hard because you knew that people in Colorado, that was the big voice. I mean, Wichita, on and on. Your owners could listen to you about wherever they're at. So yeah, it was a fun format with adult contemporary. We liked working the FM better, and now I like working the AM better because it's more my, 90s music and stuff like that. So I've aged out.
Right. Well, so how does it work when you put together a show? Are you, how much are you winging it as it's going along?
100%. My pregame is about 4. It's starting the coffee pot as soon as I get there at 5 till. And then I hit the news, and then I start right after 9 o'clock. But usually I don't have, the only format I really go by is I have a Halloween show, which is actually pre-recorded because it's the same stuff, and a Christmas show, which is pre-recorded. And that's really about the only format. Now and then I'll do cartoons and feature cars or girls' names or something. But no, it's usually winging it. And it's sometimes the beat of what's going on. If there's a snowstorm, I'm concentrating on, weather updates and et cetera. But farming is where I kind of got my start in radio too. That we talk about that. I worked for the Wieland farm. I learned I never wanted to be in farming again, is what I learned. But I'd have the radio on, and I thought, man, I can do that. And that's also what got me going there, because farming was hard work and radio wasn't. But
yeah, that was for my father and my Uncle Charlie.
Uncle Charlie,
Wheeland,
yeah.
Right?
Oh, I could write a book. There'd be serious sides, and there'd be some comics. And then, I did really learn a lot, and I really did learn. I didn't want to be in farming. It's you got to be a mechanic, you got to be a veterinarian, you got to be an agriculture specialist, you got to be a scientist. There's a lot to farming and ranching, and I knew it was over my head. So after killing quite a lot of crops and et cetera, I got out of farming and got into radio. Went to work for Keller's in Page City area, working at the elevator and farming there. And then I also farmed some for Matt Dumler. And I remember out there cultivating corn. And I killed so much corn. You're going down those crops, and I'd get off. And I was okay till the owner went over and saw aerial how much corn I actually wiped out. And I thought, man, I can't do this. And so that got me into radio. Ben Keller, who I was working for at the elevator, he knew I just started radio, and he said, you need to go up there. You don't need a farm. And so I went up to Colby, and I was getting $5 an hour during wheat harvest, which is pretty good money. And these guys paid me $5 an hour to be on the radio. And I thought, well, geez, it's way better to say it's 105 degrees and now back to the Royals on radio, which actually got my start. I was when the Royals were on, they needed somebody to play the commercials and do the IDs. And that's what really got my start into radio full, commercial wise anyway. So.
Right. Well, how about Bebop Saturday mornings?
It was a
background
mistake.
on that?
Well, Barry McCoy, who and
my Aunt Judy's husband at the time.
Right. I was in Oberlin then, and he started this program. He started it, not me. It was Bebop Saturday with him, and he kept the rights to Bebop Saturday, and I didn't want to change it too much, so that's where it became Bob Shop. But it was an oldies show, a lot of 50s. Barry played a lot of platters, My Prayer, and everything I played, it better have an upbeat. I couldn't do a show. It had to be really romantic, soft stuff, elevator music. But he started it, and then he had another host at the time, and then he invited me to come over. And then when he left, I just kept doing it. And it really hasn't changed. I mean, I don't play as much 50s and 60s, but I like starting out the show that way because it's short songs and upbeat, and a real long song, you actually lose your energy. When they're short like that, keep them going. But when you get into Meatloaf, an 8-minute song, geez, even I'm bored. So I lose my attention span. And that's where Barry McCoy started it, and it's been gone ever since. And like I said, L&M Steel's been a sponsor since we started it. I've outlived most of my sponsors. What time is it? And that's where it started. It was his idea. And even though our format on both those stations are far from oldies rock and roll, that's still what we go back to. And it's been very popular. It's not me, it's the music. It's different on the dial, so.
Right. And how do you keep it current? Like, are you just listening to music on your own, or keeping it fresh, I guess? Do you just sort of have your own feel?
It's stale. I really do. It kind of depends on the day, the music I pick, and I try not to pick, even though a whole Saturday goes by, I try not to pick some of the same songs. If I played Traveling Band by CCR, upbeat going, I try not to play it the next week. But a lot has to do with I like tempo. If I always say caffeine in the cup, and then I want that gets into my ears, it gets me going. So caffeine in the ear too. So the upbeat music and the caffeine just keeps it going. It's almost everything is upbeat. In fact, if I play 2 slow songs, I'll get calls. You need to pick it up. And I don't blame them. They're out there farming. They're out there. And that's who I catered to begin with, was the farmers, because that's how I was listening to radio as a farmer. So it's hard to get really excited about, Barbra Streisand being on the radio as you're cutting wheat. So it was kind of upbeat going. And that's how I kind of formatted. It's just fun song. And the listeners have a lot to do with what they request too. And most of them do request upbeat music, or I don't play it.
Do you get a lot of requests?
Yes. We have a request line, but now we have a request text where they can text me a photo. They can text me a request. Wow, it's amazing. That's where you find out where they're all calling from and see where they're at. But a lot of requests. Can't get to them all, very seldom, but you can pick out the ones that fit the format. But yeah, I do. I encourage requests. A lot of the guys don't. There's a little more work to find it and put them back on the air, record them and play it back. But that keeps it upbeat as well. And I do get a lot of requests.
Right. You mean like recording the audio of the person that called in, and then bringing that
play it right
into
back.
the feed?
They want to hear, AC/DC. And so I play it right then and play AC/DC. So it's easy to do. I mean, I can do it, but it keeps me going, the calls.
But are you doing that? Or is there a person behind the scenes?
No, I do
that's
the
helping?
recording and all that. Yeah.
Okay. So it's just, you're kind of running the show.
I hate it if somebody's in that control room with me. It just absolutely drops my energy level down. And I think I focus so much. I have friends that I'll think about that maybe are farming. And so I'm just talking to them. Sometimes I got to watch that. I'm talking right to them. And I think when I'm, I get somebody comes in and I lose that energy, or I lose that concentration. I can't believe I say concentration on the radio, but it really is coming in, drinking coffee, having a good time, playing the tunes of, just getting paid for it.
Right. But it's just you connecting with your audience and kind of controlling the show.
Yep. It's and with their help, their requests, their input, their energy.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, so back even before that, you come from a big family.
Yep.
I'm curious about your early life and your parents or other mentors that might have influenced you along the way.
My brothers probably had the biggest influence on me because they were successful. They went to college. So, you kind of do what the big brothers do. And so they had a big influence, probably why I wanted to be successful. But when you start out in radio and you're just a disc jockey, it's not a good living. And when I saw the sales guys at the radio station driving the new cars and dressed pretty, and they never had to work that much, just drove around and visited people. That also had me, my brothers were both into sales really. And that had a big influence on me. It was opportunity to make some good money. So I took advantage of that opportunity. And family had a lot to do with that. I think we didn't have a lot growing up. No one told us that. And none of my friends did either. But, when I looked at some of the other kids, again, the salesman had the new cars, I kind of wanted that. So family had a lot to do with that. And I feel sorry for the kids that had everything given to them, because I worked and I'd go out and hunt pop bottles, and gave me a purpose and a direction. And I think that started out as a kid with mowing lawns. And I used to work for W.W. Crownover down the street on Main Street, Oakley. And he paid me $5 a week to take care of his yard while he was vacationing all summer. And my dad always said, and you still have that first $5 he paid you. But wow, that's where, it gave me incentive to get up and go and save. And then it gives you an ownership. Proud to take care of stuff, because it was yours, and you had to, if it broke, you had to pay for it and all that. So I'm thankful for that kind of upbringing, because I think if I was one of those spoiled kids, I'd have turned out just like them. And I'm thankful, and I've been very blessed.
Yeah. Well, and so are you the youngest Heskett in the family?
They quit when they hit perfection. Yes. I lost a brother in Vietnam, and then 2 other brothers and 2 sisters, and me, the youngest. And they all say I was the most spoiled, and I don't know if I believe that. I will tell you, my mom said I was just tired of being a parent, and I had to run. I mean, I'd stay out late and never get in trouble, that type of deal. But it's because they gave up, I think. But yeah, I was the youngest, and they quit when they hit perfection.
Well, and you're still here.
I still standing up. I still love radio. I don't think I've aged. I'm not kidding you. My sound, I swear, is maybe a little bit better than it ever was. It was way more nasal, and now you try to stand up at the board and talk from the diaphragm. And so I concentrate on that. So, yep, I'm still here.
Yeah, on the radio, it sounds the same as I remember from 1983.
That's sad if you don't like it, but that's good if you did. Yes.
That's right. Well, you mentioned your brother. It was your oldest brother, I believe. And it's my understanding that he's the only person from this community that lost his life in Vietnam.
Yeah, we lost one other in Logan County, just 2 in Logan County. But yes, the only one in Oakley, the only casualty. And that was tough. Yeah, if that's what you're getting at. I was a 2nd grader. And at the time, I didn't maybe really understand death or Vietnam and all that. But as I got closer to his age, wow, I had a hard time dealing with that, because he was so successful at 20 years old. He had his own cow herd. He was going to college to a business school. He was coming back to open up his own clothing store. In fact, he was going to go be partners with Mr. Lunsway in Petey. We called him Lunsway, had his own clothing store. He called it Mr. Jim's after my brother Jim, because again, he was going to open his clothing store. And I thought, wow, I never had a direction. It was beer money and gas money, and that was about it for me. And he was married and had his, together. So when I got there, I thought, wow, I got a lot of improvement. So it took a while, but
Right. And it must have been a pretty seismic difficulty for your family.
Oh, it was. My dad was never the same. You never are when you lose anybody in any way. It's something I think about, though. On Memorial Day, we remember my brother. We put the military comes out there and put flowers out and remembers everybody with a service. But if you lose I lost a neighbor, J.R. Keller, in a car wreck, and there was never any significant where the whole community came together and honored. And so in a sense, at least people don't forget that. They remember his sacrifice. I guarantee if my brother had his choice between a car wreck or serving his country, he went out that way. But it is hard on family. It really is. Yeah.
Well, and I know the community honored is. I've seen his uniform over here in the library across the hall.
It was one of the Ed Coster and Elizabeth said it was the first funeral. They just had bought the funeral home that week. And it was the biggest funeral. Stan Clark was probably as well, but one of the biggest funerals anybody ever attended. There was people outside of the Methodist Church that couldn't even start to come in. So I consider that an honor that they showed up, and people were very good to my folks during that period. And it was a tough period because they had a heck of a time getting his body back, and I think it was over 2 weeks. And my dad didn't know, my gosh, how do you plan a funeral? What kind of, we're going to have an open casket or not? Just all that made it even all the worse, not knowing when the body would be there and all that. So it was tough on family in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, that happened in the 68. So very early.
Yeah.
In the war.
January of 68.
Yeah.
Well, and if you go to the Vietnam Wall and how it peaks, as you probably know this, the numbers in the middle, the names in the middle that's the peak of the war, the most casualties. And he was right in there in the heaviest fighting. And he was drafted because it didn't matter. He wanted to go after he was drafted. He wasn't going to not go. And but it was some of the biggest casualties. He's right in the middle of that Vietnam Wall, which again had the significance of the most casualties at that time. It went up and went down and all that. So, yeah, that was 68 in the early part of January.
Wow. Well, so it's been since you grew up and you've been in radio all this time since then. A couple months back, City Shacklet is a musician who you grew up in Oakley, Kansas, and she lives in St. Louis. And she was on my show, and she dedicated a song to Oakley. She dedicated her rendition of Bob Steger's "Still the Same." And I have a sense of that things around here in some ways are the same. And I'm curious from your view in radio and living here for the last 50 years, or are we still the same, or are we
good and bad? There's things that need to be changed that haven't, and that's maybe our generation and our isolation. Good that we're still, if you need anything, we're there. We're the good old neighbors. We're the small town that is there for you and will help with benefits. And my gosh, the amount of prayers you get for if you're sick and needing the prayers, the whole town that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. And as any small town, the gossip, I don't think that's going to change. The small gossip. My gosh, I was in a car wreck and I had to convince people that I wasn't dead. Well, I said you died last night. And I swear I'm still, and it was a bad wreck. But and I know what you mean by changing. We're still maybe set back in our ways. And a lot of the older people are, as I think any community, smaller the community, maybe you're not, exposed to as much as some communities. I always thought, my dad always said on Mittens, 24 hours a day out here at the restaurant, he goes, you could see the whole world. And by that, he'd go out there for coffee and here might come somebody dressed every walk of life there, whatever. So Oakley is a little bit more, visual as far as I-70 goes to the whole world, where some of the smaller towns, you get off those main highways, they'll look at you and wonder, what are you doing in this part of the woods? But a guy in McDonald, Kansas told me one time, though, we ran an ad for him, and the ad says, if you don't wave at us in McDonald, we're going to turn you around and pull you over and go, what the hell's wrong? You didn't wave. So anyway, good and bad. Yeah, I can see where, and I still think that has to do with the age and generation of, change. We're changing, but not as fast as other bigger communities,
Right.
maybe.
Right.
At least you don't see it.
And what about the radio business? Clearly the media landscape has changed in the last 20 years, 30 years.
I picked the right media. I mentioned before, newspapers, their circulations, which I wish we had more hometown newspapers, but their circulation's down and they've folded, even the big ones, the big cities, because people just aren't reading them anymore. Circulations are down. They can't sell advertising. So we got that money over to radio, the farm journals, the High Plains journals. We got so much of their money. TV is, I don't know. I know a lot of young people at the radio station have no satellite, have no cable. That's all free and, and it's commercial free. And so they don't see those commercials anymore. So they, the consumer needs to reach. They need to reach those consumers. So they do it through radio. And even people say, I hardly ever listen to the radio, still listening to the radio. They have it, on somewhere in their house or somewhere in a car, usually. Mm-hmm. Even if it's satellite, they'll still come over to local for a tornado warning or whatever. So, and then Facebook, we have a full-time girl that's all she does is social media. And wow, we've expanded the hits into thousands sometimes, depending on what the story is. They'll share it and they'll share it. And as you know, so that works, really expanded there. And that gets people more listening to the station. We've had concerts. Again, we do so much more than the other stations do. We just had Mark Schultz in concert 2 nights ago. Phil Vassar. We've got Diamond Rio coming up. We have a comedy night coming up. I've worked with, I think I counted, it's over 50 different, mainly country artists that we constantly put on shows for the people and get involved. So radio, I think we're more involved and we're more engaged because of the people we hire. We're live all the time. So it's changed for the better. In a sense, it hasn't changed because it used to be live, but everybody else kind of went a different direction in the radio world. And our sales are good. Our listenerships are up.
And so how does it work with like your social media strategy? Are you broadcasting the same thing on, say, a Facebook stream as you are on the radio, or is it a different show? And you're trying to drive people to listen to you on the radio?
Different content.
What's the purpose? I guess.
Well, I asked them that the other day. They show me all these hits and I go, well, what's the purpose? But it is to drive people to listen to the radio, but also they'll say, look at these hits. And so we're now selling advertising, on the Facebook page, wherever it might be. And, people go there to see the concert content. They see highlights of the concert. They see upcoming announcements. If they want to see their kid on, we had a high school choir singing all that way. So their idea, yes, to drive people into Rocket M Media, and we're pushing it with social media and Facebook Live. And Facebook, it amazes me how many hits we have and comments we have on Facebook. I always kind of thought, and I may be wrong, Facebook is kind of a thing of the past. It seems like, Facebook seems to be that it's more the younger generation really doesn't do that as much. So we're keeping up with the different, the changes, whatever. So radio kind of stays the same, but we push it, yes, with the media, like again, social media, Facebook, etc.
Right. Cool. So I'm curious, your personality, what I've observed when I listen to you, it's always upbeat. Paul Heskett is upbeat and having a good day, and everybody else is going to as well. Do you actually have a sort of like you jump out of bed in the morning and it's always a good day, or do you fake it on the days when you're having a rough day?
That's a good question. Yes, no. I love what I'm doing. I jump out of bed. Friday nights, I usually don't sleep that well because I'm so excited about going. And again, having it all to myself when I walk in there. Just my little turn it on and go. If I'd see the people looking at me like this, I'm not pretty boy. People see me for the first time. Sorry. But on radio, I'm beautiful. And on radio, I can drink, I'm on top of the world and I'm drinking caffeine and getting out of there real electric, but I really do wake up. If it ever gets to be a job, if it ever gets to be where I don't like it, I'll sound like it and I'll get out of it. But man, I love doing what I do. And it isn't, it really is fun. Again, people are talking and you're waking up and they're saying stuff, like I got some on our request line about, I've listened to you since, and I live clear out in, Lyman, Colorado. That AM is so big that we've had listeners before we ever streamed clear out to the Rocky Mountains and clear into Missouri. And I it's not faking it. Now and then, though, if you're sick and not feeling well, I have a hard time and I don't have a voice. I went through something just recently where I didn't work one Saturday. The next Saturday was recorded. By the third Saturday, finally got it together. And then a squirrel went on our transmitter line and took me off the air for 2 hours. That's the Lord's way of saying that's enough. But so I went through a little period there where I don't know if I had to fake it, but I had to work at it, which I normally never do. Work in radio. Nah, it's a word you don't ever use in my business.
Well, so do you feel like you had a natural gift for it? Or when you started, did you have to like hone your craft? Did people give you advice, or is it just you kind of fell into it and this was your sweet spot? Credit
goes to mom and dad. My mom had a sense of humor. My dad had a sense of humor. And I thank them for that I got, my sense of humor. I really do enjoy life. I've been blessed so many ways. And I think it's hard to keep still. Almost two things. When you almost die in a car wreck and you're not supposed to be here, I think you just grab every minute. And I love outdoors. I really do get excited. So, but mom and dad had that sense of humor. I never had to. I've never worked for it. I do very little show prep. Real fast, I got to tell you, my mom has gobs of stories, but one of my favorites with the dad was Preacher Bob was in a wreck right here at an intersection. He was coming along, sun in his eyes, and he ran into the second engine of the train.
Bob Kelly?
Bob, anyway, he was at the Baptist church.
Okay.
Bob. Preacher Robert. Anyway, he knows.
Preacher Bob.
Yeah, Preacher Bob.
Got it.
At the Baptist church. Well, he was bummed up pretty bad. Well, my dad hadn't heard the story. I take him, this is in about the last 2 months he was alive, my dad. And we went out to Minton's, and here come Preacher Bob in, and his arm in his sling, and his glasses all bandaged up, and he's black-eyed and cuts all over him. He looked pretty rough. My dad never knew what happened. He goes, "My gosh, preacher, what happened?" And Bob goes, "Well, Leonard, I was coming to the intersection. The sun was in my eye, and I didn't see the train. And I ran right into the second engine, and it took me all the way down about 2 blocks for it finally spit me out." And my dad goes, "Well, preacher, are you okay?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm okay. Thank goodness I had the Lord with me. I had the Lord with me." And my dad goes, "Well, you better let the Lord ride with me because you're going to kill him." So he had that kind of sense of humor, and I inherited that. And again, I think that if you enjoy life and if you're not, if you're doing I'd hate to be doing what I'd hate, a job that I'd hate or a life that I would hate or whatever. But I've been fortunate in marriage and health and career and just gifted in many ways.
Yeah. Are you kind of staying the course for the next few years? Or
I don't know. When did that happen?
You just buy wake some up new radio stations?
No, I've never wanted to be in management. I've never wanted, because you lose your freedom. I've never wanted to own a station because I'd never sleep. And I get a commission for everything I sell, and I don't have to have any expenses whatsoever. Most people have, I have a vehicle and cell phone, and I can get help with that, but I get a commission no matter what. If the tower falls down, I don't have to pay for any of the upkeep and all. I've got a good gig going. They pay me a percentage, and that's been my drive is, pride. I like to be the number one salesman. And that's important to me. And so that, I guess that'd be ego. as well as the opportunity to make money and commissions a way to do it. I'd never want to own them. No, that'll never happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you like get on the road and go face to face with a lot of your clients, or are you on the phone a lot?
On the phone a lot, not so much face to face. Very seldom. Now and then there'll be a meeting, a fair board meeting or something. COVID again, we weren't doing much of that, but anymore, it seems like the younger they are, the more they will reply to a text and not a phone call. The more they're responsive more with an email than they are probably setting. And people are so busy they don't maybe want that time to go face to face. And then again, I've been selling it for years, so they pretty well know, what kind of programs we have, when they need to update commercials, things like that. So no, it's pretty much, I can just stay at home a lot. I can be anywhere as long as I have the cell phone service and cut commercials and talk to them. So not a lot of face to face, probably only 10% in a month's time that I'm actually face to face.
Wow, cool. And what about people that are thinking about a career in radio? I'm curious about people getting started. And do you see a lot of it? Do you see a lot of young people interning, or how do they get their start?
A lot of them, we don't even have the radio program anymore at Colby College, which is sad because we used to go be on radio at the college, and then we'd graduate and get paid to be full-time at a commercial station in Colby. And now they don't even have that radio program. And we don't have a lot of on-air people. We train a lot of our own, but we have actually a satellite service that sounds like they're there. These guys are good. They'll even tell the weather, and they, versus the old satellite guys. So we start the morning out all live, usually till about noon. And then we have mixed in satellite stuff. So we don't need the on-air talent. But I tell them, if you think you're going to be a DJ, they always say, I want to be a DJ because I like music and I really know it. And he's really, but that doesn't pay well being a DJ. I tell them, do like I do, or do like, if you're going to do radio, learn sports, become a sports director. That'll pay better. Get into sales. In fact, most all of our people we hire in sports also sell their own programs, their own play-by-play and broadcasts. And that gives them way more opportunity for better money. So I tell you, don't go just into radio DJ, but think about sales or think about management, because that's where the money is. That's what I tell people. But do like I do too. I got in on the ground floor. I was sign-off guy and sign-on guy. And then I started, more of we were 24 hours a day then, and I'd work nights and I loved weekends because that was extra money. I'd work the weekends and Sunday nights and the holidays. And so I learned it that way by getting in. And when you learn it that way, maybe a way better salesman because I know the programs, I know, the best place to put their commercials and all that. So I tell them, don't plan on just being a DJ, plan on getting into management or sales or something on the side. And
is that how most of the on-air talent people also doing a sales role?
They are with us. Bigger markets are doing just on air. I have a buddy that's big market. And Will Sterrett has got a voice of, sounds like Moses on the TV, unbelievable voice. He started in small business or small radio, went to Topeka, and now he's the voice. As I said, he'll be on all these stations at once and all these different formats. He's sitting here talking to this one and rolls over and talks to this one. And man, that's amazing. But he's one of the few that's just in radio or whatever. So unbelievable talent too. If you got that voice, or if you have that voice, you can, that gets you a long way. I never had it. That's why I'm in small market radio.
You got a pretty good, unique voice.
People unique. That's a nice way to say it. Whiny. Fine. I learned to talk more from the diaphragm when I'm on the air. And that used to be so nasal. Stereo Sunshine, KX100, for whatever reason, is how we all sounded. And then, and that's something nobody else does. I stand up there's stand-up boards, for goodness sake. So you're supposed to stand up, talk from the diaphragm, and more energetic. You're on your feet. Versus these guys that slump down, and you can just tell by their posture. I can hear it. And an old guy told me one time, he goes, always smile when you're on the air. Smile when you're on the telephone. And you can detect that. You can. What are you doing? Almost sounds like, why? What'd you hear? But they can hear that smile, and they can feel that smile. They feel that energy. So I'm standing up, and anyway, yeah.
So you're standing through your whole show?
I do. When I had issues with my foot and just slumped down like that, it wasn't near. People said, well, you're finally feeling better. You got your energy level back. Well, I finally got to stand up. So I got my energy level back. So, and maybe it's habit, but again, I've always learned your energy level, you're back and forth, you're on it, you're talking from, you're not all crimped up. So I stand up.
Yeah. Well, any kind of lessons learned from your career that like advice for, I don't know, people in the business or just in general?
I maybe would have got into sales earlier. And Barry McCoy is the one who got me into sales when I said, I'd sure like to, and he gave me 1, 2, 3 accounts. And it was the easiest money I ever made, because I remember him being in my office and I got on the phone and it was Oakley Motors and I sold them, I don't know, a $300 package for 2 months. And I hang it up and he goes, you just made $90 or whatever it was, commission then. And I just couldn't believe that. I did it and I was prepared for the fun, but I did it that fast versus that'd have been a lot of on air, or Whelan Brothers. That'd have been, 48 hours, But it was the easiest money I ever made. And I wish I would have got into sales earlier. But sometimes you got to start here to see that. From the bottom, you can see that mountain that you can, if you're up here, maybe you don't. So I wish I'd have got into sales faster is what I'd tell people. And, again, you can still do it by coming in and we can teach that right person how to be on the air and what to say. But most of the people we have do still come from a radio background of a, college at Lawrence or K-State, maybe Fort Hays State. They still have a program. So we do catch on air people that way, but we don't have turnover. We've had Shane Simpson's been there for 20 some years, the voice of the, 100.3 in the morning. We've just had Chad Jones. That's all he's ever done. He's our manager now. He started off on air. We just don't have the turnover.
Do you have people knocking on your door and you don't have opportunities for them?
Yeah, not so much. You don't get, I don't see that anymore. I mean, I don't see the resumes come in, but I know when they were looking for a sports director, we were flooded with, and this is a small market, but they can get a chance out here to go other places. And you ask about anybody that's ever started here, they've gone further by getting a step on the door. And it's a small market, but yet that AM is one of the biggest stations in the entire Midwest, and they know that. So not so much knocking at the door, but when you go out there to Kansas Association of Broadcasters and saying we're looking for a sports director, whatever, and then we have to say, okay, but you also have to sell, so you narrow it down. Right now we have the #1 sports broadcaster in the state of Kansas, and that's an honor. He loves it out here. You think a boy from Topeka who's used to going into Kansas City, but he really does like his job. So just got to get his fiance out here now.
He moved to Colby?
Yep, he moved to Colby. So we had our choice of the #1 dog out there, So resumes. So right now there's so much of satellite and other competitions just not doing what we're doing. So we do get flooded with resumes, especially sports program directors, because we make them. I mean, well, not only have to be on air, but you also have to sell, and you also have to run these other stations we can run all our stations from the Colby office. We have the Patriot in Hayes, and it's all done with our sports director. Dan is the one who programs everything, cuts the commercials, puts the programs in, and does it amazingly just from his office or from home. And not every sports guy is going to do that. So, but yeah, we can whittle them down, but we still get a lot of response when we advertise.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed, it seems like since I've been back in Oakley for about a year, that there is a little bit of a migration away from the urban centers to this community. Are you seeing that in the other stations that you've
I see it in other communities. I call in Hoxie and some in Colby and Grainfield. And Hoxie and Grainfield especially, it seems like their main streets are really young. And I'm jealous of my friends in Hoxie. They have a full main street. Businesses, these Heim boys that came back and that migrated back, Six Toes Feed and Seed, a young guy that took over that business. Schaefer, the kid that came back. And so it's a way younger Main Street because they wanted to raise their kids here. And I see that more in Hoxie, but I wish it happened more in Oakley. As far as our Main Street's just not as busy, but people come back and golly, we have a place for them. We need to find better housing. But yeah, I do see more right now, probably than you mentioned, probably just the last few years of people coming back. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. I had a friend in Nashville, and she said, I found out in a real hurry just how serious people were over that last carton of milk. She goes, I feared for my life when I went to the grocery store and I'm walking out with stuff. We don't have that here. We never did have that shut down here. But she moved back because of hostile environment, and she saw what people were like and what they would do when needy and they were going to try to survive. Yeah. So that had a lot to moving people back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious on Hoxie. I mean, I don't know if there's an answer here, but what do you think? It's just a few people taking their own initiative, or that's something that the community did that encouraged that
I think it was opportunity. They have more irrigated land up there, so they sell irrigation and a whole lot more there. ag-wise, so they need more salesmen and more mechanics. Mechanics are needed everywhere. The pharmacist came back. Buddy of mine took over the insurance store there, and I don't know what really brought him back except for living there and wanting to raise families there. I don't think it was any kind of recruiting, and they are smaller towns, so maybe I'm seeing that on a scale of 5 business compared to ours. And I always said this about Oakley, and it's a positive. And I don't know how we do this, but 24 hours a day, we need people at the nursing home, at the hospital, 24 hours a day at Pioneer runs people at night, Pioneer Feed Yard, Mittens TA out there, 24 hours a day, JJ Oil Company, 24 hours a day. So maybe I don't see it up and down Main Street because they're night and day at those big established businesses. I mean, again, that's quite a lot of 24. I don't know how a town does it. I don't know how a town of our size does that many businesses 24 hours a day, but we pull it off.
Yeah. Well, I know that I've talked to people. It's hard for employers to find workers for various positions. Do you get a lot of ads for positions?
I do a lot of help wanted ads, and you got to be creative. They have to be creative of the pay scale or what they're offering. And sometimes it's, I was learned a long time ago, people don't quit their job because of money. It's usually some other issue why they quit their job. So is it good money that's going to draw up to it? I do one and you'll have weekends off. I have a client right now, you work 4 days on, 3 days off. That appealed to a lot of people that they could take off, 3 days in a row. And so you got to be creative, but yes. And it's not just here. I mean, not just Northwest Kansas. It's obviously in the cities, places are shutting down. We all know that. And I don't know what's really changed there because people just don't want to work anymore. They don't want to stay home and collect that check. I never did see that out here. I never did see people. There probably was a few, but I mean, I never knew anybody that stayed home and collected their check. So
right,
it's work ethic's good out here, and I think that's hard to find. I've noticed people that leave this area do really well from this area. They become managers and go on, and something we're doing right to again probably the work ethic, family values, whatever. So.
Cool. Well, one of the things I didn't have this on my list. I should have prepped you for it.
Yeah, I'm not prepped at all.
You got a favorite story from your years in radio of a broadcast or
they involved drinking, and at that time it was legal and suggested you drink. Do I have any stories? I've made mistakes. It's live. It's one of the last things out there. The TV boys, outside of a newscast, they can redo it until they get it right. But radio, 24 hours a day, we're live. And I always say you can't unring a bell once you say it. And there's been some things. It came out wrong. I said it wrong, or they took it wrong, or whatever. One of the first mess ups I had to write, if you mess up on the radio side of things, you have to write the FCC. Dear FCC, I did this. Or otherwise, if you don't, and somebody turns you in, you're fined fairly well. And I was doing news, and can I cuss on this one?
We're Facebook and YouTube,
okay.
So you're fine.
So the news is over with, and I was really good at back timing, where the song would go, da 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 da, time for news, and you'd have to hit that top of the hour, the bottom of the hour, and I was superb at that. But I'd have my mic on just in case that song was off a little bit, where I could say, time for news or whatever. But I had it planned out where the song was go da 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 da, and the news would start right there. News time from ABC. Had my mic on, and it goes da 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 da, and I turned it up too fast, and this tone goes off. Beep. And that was bad. I should have hit the news, so I should have filled in that gap. My mic was on. It goes da 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 da. And I go, shit, time for news. That was one of my oops, one of the first ones, and I had to write the FCC on that. And then there was another story, and I didn't mean it to. I was just really nervous, and it came out so wrong. I'll tell you later. Of course, I won't tell that story. But no, I haven't. Again, there's times I've said stuff, and there's people that don't like fast and loud, which I am. I yell, and so it's not everybody's. I mean, it's very popular, but there'll be people out there saying I can't stand listening to it or him or whatever, and that's called variety. So I have some stories. A lot of them, we were so on air with promotions, and back then we did drink a lot. My gosh, when Barry McCoy was manager, I think it was you had to do it. But we used to go do the Beer Wolf, and that involved the Coors guys paid you. I mean, that was part of it.
What's the Beer Wolf?
The Beer Wolf, you dress up as this wolf in this suit, and the Beer Wolf's going to be there. And we'd have all these chugging contests. Don't do this at home.
Where?
At the Rusty Bucket and all these bars, we'd go in, and that's what we do.
On behalf of Budweiser?
Coors. And so everything was like a drinking contest, a nipple contest. We'd put these nipples on, and who could suck the beer out the fastest, who could walk the line after you. It was I mean, that was that kind of, it was accepted then. And
Right.
again, so when you were the beer wolf, you drank, and man, I could tell some partying stories. Oh my gosh, it was, and who can't?
And that
But
was a gig for the radio.
that was a gig for the radio. Coors actually say, we'll pay you money to dress in this wolf and go out and drink and make an ass of yourself. And
And so you're live on air at this place in the suit
and
drinking and having a good
you're
time.
doing not live all the time, but you're doing call-ins, which were live. And I was doing one from Stockton, Kansas one time, and I shouldn't have been on the radio, and I was. And just I don't remember saying anything wrong, but I was yelling, I'm sure. One time, what's his name? Lucius So Gracious? Who's the opera singer that Tanya Tucker discovered? Anyway, I can't think. To all the girls I loved before.
Julio Iglesias.
Julio Iglesias. I was getting there. I was just saying it backwards. And he was playing one night, and this disc jockey, instead of playing upbeat music, would always play these sad love songs. And I went in and hit stop and go, and that's enough of that shit right on the air. I wouldn't have done that late at night without alcohol in me. So people who loved that love song didn't love me. So there are some stories, yeah, but it seems like the real wild ones were more on the party side. Again, everybody's passed, but there's been some regrets. There's been promotions we've done that didn't work, So I jumped out of a airplane, and back then we didn't have cell phones or anything, no way to go live. So they taped a recorder to my chest, and things went wrong up there. I was all bound up in my cord because my glasses were falling. So here I am, and I'm screaming and cussing all the way down. They played it back, but that didn't go as fun as I thought it would be. My buddy, he jumped after me, and he went right into a telephone pole. So it wasn't exactly the, oh boy, this would be a good time.
You mean under parachute? He smashed into a telephone pole?
It was too windy. They shouldn't have had a rookie first time he ever jumped. And it was back then static line. It wasn't where you did the jump with tandem where you're with somebody. You were on your own. And so they directed him, trying to get him out of the pole. They just couldn't get turned and went right into the pole. And I came down so hard that it would and lost my breath. And, you descend exactly however fast the wind was going. And it was just too windy for first time. I've never done it since, never wanted to do it since, but it didn't go as fun as I thought it would be.
Was this for were you doing an ad for a aviation company?
An aviation company out of Colby, one of the better commercials we ever ran. And they were going to, hey, we're trying to get people to go diving. So air diving, parachuting. Why don't you do it? And that'll entice other people. And I think the fact we never broadcast the fact that the guy almost died and had a concussion hitting the pole, and I lost my breath and was scared to death. But we tried to, edit out the fun part. And yeah, it was a paid for event. Just never went the way quite everybody planned.
All right. So there's a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of fun things in radio.
Oh, still do. The concert the other night was a blast, meeting people. That's part of it, getting out and doing remotes and meeting people. And you always get this, you look older than I thought, or you look younger than I thought. I know I'm not pretty, but I sound beautiful, so you don't look anything like you sound. And that's still fun. In fact, I was helping him with the Mint and Hoxie for a fundraiser at a golf tournament. And this big kid came up. He was a big boy, tattoos. He had piercing all over him. And I thought, he goes, "Are you Paul Heskett?" And I thought, he's going to say, "I can't stand." He goes, "You're my hero. I've listened to you." And I never thought that was fun. I never thought that'd come out of it. I thought it'd be, I'm going to, and I remember that too. I remember I did a lot of dances, and this big old boy came, mountain of a guy. And he goes, "You're Paul Heskett?" And I'm, he's looking down at me. Yeah. And he goes, "I've listened to you since I was a little kid." I'm looking at this mountain of a man going, "Man, I've been in radio a long time." And I have been. I've gone through, one of you say fun. I don't read obituaries, but oddly enough, somebody brought it to my attention on a few obituaries. It says, "And every Saturday, Maxine loved listening to Bop Shop Saturday." I thought, man, you're doing something right when you get the obituary. So it's been fun. Yeah, there's a lot of fun in radio.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. I'm excited to keep listening to you, I guess, for the next 20 years, 30 years.
Oh, it is a matter of single digits now.
Okay.
I don't know how many. I mean, we're one day closer to being done. We all are in life, I always say that this moment just passed. We'll never see it again. And, there's only so many moments out there. And I do. I am so blessed. I married so well and all that, but I really enjoy life. And if you're out there and you're in a job you hate, I'd get out of it. Career-wise, how would you like to be for the rest of your life in some kind of career you just hated? And my dad was a little bit of that way. He didn't like he went from farming to parts guy, and it wasn't a good fit. And so, find something you like, and I found what I like, and I've been so blessed. I have just so many people, support me, and it's been a good gig.
Well, that's great. Well, it's great to hear your history. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone listening and tuning in and learning a little bit more about the man behind the voice we've heard for the last 40 years.
40
So,
years.
All right. Take care, Paul.
Thank you.
See y'all next time.
I ran out of coffee.